Hello, and welcome back to Camp Nowhere. We have a lot to cover today. I am not going to spend a ton of time waxing poetically about how awesome Allie Rockwell is, because I think that you're about to find that out for yourself. She is an expert on all things international travel. Let's get into it. So I think that something that I would love to kind of kick this conversation off with is just tracking your relationship with travel over the years. So kind of set the scene. How did you fall in love with travel? When was this? Where were we going? What were we doing? Tell me everything.
It was like a love story that was just meant to be. Like my longest, probably truest love, honestly, of my life has been travel. Um, I felt like I had like a spiritual transformational experience at an impressionable age. So I had traveled a little bit with my mom and dad to Europe. I think we did like England and France, a couple things like that in high school. But it wasn't until college that I decided to take a winter term to Guatemala. And I got there on the ground, and it was almost this immediate, it was my first exposure to a developing country. And I already came with a background of speaking some Spanish and kind of having a love for the culture, the food, the colors, everything. But when I got there, it's like something inside changed. And it changed the entire course of my life. I stayed there for 3 weeks. We did Habitat for Humanity project, and I fell in love with the people and the sounds, the dusty paths that were with speckled with homes, made out of cinder block, the open air kitchens, the little kids running around with kind of rose cheeks, just everything. So I actually called my mom and dad from a payphone there, and I said, "Hey, all is great, and I'm gonna stay." And then they
And
said,
I'm not coming back.
and they said, "Glad it's all going well, and we'll see you on Saturday because you're coming home." so, um, so I did come home, obviously, but I had like a 1 week turnaround. I went to all of my professors at school. I said, "I'm going back to Guatemala. I have found a nonprofit from down there. I'm going to link up with them. Can you help me with my coursework? Can we do something individually?" And they were so supportive. They were super happy, like super supportive of me, said, "Go for it." So I was able to come back around to talk about this plan to my mom and dad, and they agreed to it. So my dad and I flew back down, found an apartment to live in, and I ended up living there for the next 6 months. And I worked in a small local village. I took the local bus in every day. I ate lunch with a local family, and I became fluent in Spanish, and it just changed the whole course of my life. And I have been a traveler, or somebody who is always thinking about travel, someone who's always thinking about travel in the back of their mind, ever since, really.
First of all, I feel like I got to give huge props to your parents. I love how they were like, no, 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 you're definitely coming home. But I love that you were able to just be like, lay it all out for them, and for them to, in the end, be supportive of that, even to the point where they went back down with you to help you
Yeah.
get settled back in. That's
Yeah,
pretty
it is
amazing.
special. It is, and I've thought about that a lot since, because that's not the last trip my dad took me to. It pretty much became like a thing that my mom would just make sure he went, make sure, because this is before like Google Maps and everything, make sure he figured out how I could get, and I have a zero sense of direction. So he would like be his
So this
homework
is
to
a
be like,
really good thing that he was with you.
well, he has no sense of direction either. So it was like the
Oh,
blind leading the
hilarious.
blind. My mom is just like sitting at home, like covering her eyes, hoping for the best. But like a few years later, he did the same thing, but we flew out to Tibet. And I specifically remember we would leave from the hostel, and we would just do loops around the villages that I could go out and about on my own and make it back. And then he would kind of say, "Okay, you're good to go." And then he'd get on a plane and go home. So,
How did that feel to watch some sense of familiarity just like ultimately turn around
be
and leave
gone.
you to your own devices.
I mean, in Guatemala, I was filled with joy. Like I was very, very excited. I just couldn't wait. I just felt like I was on this precipice of like learning my own self and finding this passion in me that I didn't even know was there. I had like a bit of support because I was going to be working with other people who were there as well. When I touched down in Lhasa, Tibet, I mean, my dad tells the story. I looked at him and I just had tears streaming down my face. And granted, and also we are at really high altitude. So like you're hyperventilating, you can't really breathe well. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. And so when my dad left the hospital a few days later, I mean, I cried. It's hard.
So that particular occasion was more so out of nervousness.
Yeah, Tibet,
Yeah.
I pretty much thought, where can I go that I would feel the most exposed and stretched the most? And then I bought plane tickets to that place.
I love that.
And it's
That's
like one of,
impressive. That's
yeah,
impressive.
yeah, it was an incredible trip. I'm so grateful I took the plunge and went for it. And I can't believe my parents let me do it.
Truly. I feel like props to all of you. Okay, so kind of how has travel evolved for you since then? So that was obviously solo travel in the time frame of college for you, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have been traveling now for almost 20 years since then. And it's, yeah, gone are the days of like being in hostels and looking up internet cafes and kind of dirtbagging it and finding other solo travelers. And I have two children now and I'm married and travel looks so differently now. Um, but I think there's this beautiful idea in travel that it's like unlike a lot of things in life that you really can't outgrow. You reach these like new dimensions as you become a new version of yourself, whatever you're in. So I am now married with kids. Travel now looks a lot more planned, like it's kind of more activity based. There's a lot more logistics to go into it. I have to be more prepared. I can't be as spontaneous. I'm not going to places quite as risky. Where, 20 years ago, I would be like, that doesn't sound like something I want to do. And now it's like this beautiful experience that has, yeah, evolved as I have evolved, essentially. It's like, sometimes I think about jobs that I feel like I've grown out of, or, a town that I feel like I've grown out of, or anything. But travel just kind of keeps coming back in a way that is creating like a different type of stretch for me, like a different depth of dimension for me. And looking at it through my children's eyes now, and I have totally different goals as far as what I want to experience and travel with them along for the ride than I ever did before. So travel in itself has evolved with so many more tools and tips and tricks and all that sort of stuff. But travel for me individually, going from like a solo college student to now a mom of two kids, it's just run the course over 20 years, every time pushing me a little bit in a different direction.
And so you all have also lived on the road full time, much in the same way that we do
Hmm.
with the kids, correct? How old
Yeah.
were they when you all hit the road?
Yeah. When we hit the road, had a 3-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter.
And where all did those travels take you?
So we bought a Sprinter van and we hit the road for about 12 months and we did pretty much half and half. We did 6 months in the United States, mostly out west. Um, and then we went into Mexico all the way down to Belize. We spent about 4 or 5 months like traversing Mexico. Initially, it started with, well, it's a little cheaper down there and it's a little warmer down there. And
Yeah.
then, we just inched our way more and more
One
south.
thing
Met
leads to
I
another.
mean, you just can't resist. And yeah, we ended up doing a full 5 months down in Mexico and into Belize. It was wonderful.
So where out of curiosity, where did you all go down through Mexico?
Yeah,
Like, how did you enter?
we entered into Baja. So we were in San Diego. We crossed down into Baja, assuming and that we would go down for about a week or two. and just kind of stay in northern Baja. And then, yeah, every time we met somebody, they'd be like, oh, like 2 hours south, like it's the water's a little clearer, the food's a little better, it's just that much more. So we'd find ourselves going south, and same story on repeat. All of a sudden, we're in Cabo, like thinking we've done the whole thing. Let's start to make our way north. Well, while we were heading back up north, I was out taking a morning stroll, having a cup of coffee early in the morning, like my favorite time of day to be out in a new area. And like the roosters were crowing, there were the stray dogs just kind of waking up. And this amazing local man was just sweeping his sidewalk and struck up a conversation with me. And he said, oh, if you love Baja, well, you've got to get over to mainland. It's lush and it's tropical and it's green. And he wrote on my coffee cup sleeve, which I still have, and the Mazatlan and the port that we would go from Baja over to mainland. And so the rest is history. I went home, I told Gio, like, oh, my husband, we have to do this trip, assuming he would say no way, because he would normally just say, no, I'm sorry, that's too crazy of an idea.
It's not a part of the plan.
Yeah, and so he agreed. And so the next day we went to the port to find the ship that we could load our truck onto, and it was a cargo ship.
I was going to say, so you took the trucker, the truck one. Yeah, that's the one.
The truck one. I was the only female. My daughter and I were the only females on board, filled with Mexican truckers. And they were incredible. It was like the most friendly, smiling people, telling us where the bathroom is, telling us where the cafeteria is. But we were linked like Tetris in. So we, open our slider. You'd have to go underneath 2 or 3 trucks to then get to the stairway to get up to the main deck.
I love you just go underneath them.
Underneath these massive truck beds. And, we had 2 small kids, and there's open railings right down into the sea. And like it was so unsafe, but it was an amazing adventure. Gio and I were very cautious with the kids, and we made it over to the mainland, where we ended up staying for about 5 more months, just going all the way, all the way east and then down south. And it was wonderful.
I think that whenever people are like, aren't you nervous to go to Mexico? I feel like stories like that man who just wants to share a little slice of what's good in his country, I feel like is 1,000 times out of 10 is how our experiences have gone. Just people, they see that you're happy to be there and excited to be there, and they just want to share what they have and what they love most about where they live. And that there's no place that I feel like plays that story out more than Mexico. I just think that everybody in Mexico, they're just very proud of their country.
Yeah.
And they should be.
Are.
They absolutely should be.
They absolutely should be.
And
we got, as you can imagine, a lot of people that were uncomfortable with us being there. And then when we came back and said it, you get were you in danger? Did anything happen? And I love to be able to say not once. I was more nervous crossing back into the United States, honestly. And there's not any other place in my life experience where we would come into a town and then be embraced, like literally smiles and hugs sometimes. Our kids would get patted on the head, and talked about their appearance or whatever. Just kids would play with each other. The warmest embraces. We were lucky to experience something like that as foreigners.
Yeah. We know quite a few families that we have traveled with while being in Mexico, and that have had plenty of experiences without us while in Mexico. And something that we've just like come to hear pretty repeatedly for all of Central and South America is that Latin American countries just really are so warm towards families and towards children. I'm trying to remember who we were talking to, but they had like a baby in arms. And like they would just go to restaurants, and women would just come and take the baby and like go hold the baby at their table while they're hanging out, and just kind of like, amazing. I just find that those experiences seem to happen quite a bit. And I think that that's always so cool.
It's so cool. So lucky to be able to experience something like that as a traveler,
Yeah. What from your travels, I guess, like what were some of those key experiences or learnings or things about travel that just made you all feel motivated to fold your children into the traveling experience? Because I think that a lot of people find it quite daunting to
Hmm.
go out with
Absolutely.
children, because like obviously you're going into endless unknown scenarios, and then to also take your children with you, I do think that there's a level of intimidation that comes with that. So like what is your motivation to getting your kids out there?
To getting my kids out there, my motivation is to raise kids who have a worldly perspective and who are global citizens. I think that the demise of so much is this idea that like this is ours. We're from here. This is all that we are in the right place, and what else is happening out there is not of concern. And truly, to find empathy in this world, we have to cross borders and see how other people live and experience that. Having my kids see, kids running down dirt paths with just meager flip flops on, and women who are cooking outside but handing us tamales as we walk by, and exposing them to hard things in the world, but also these beautiful moments of humanity, so that when they do come home and they live here in their kind of bubble, they have this idea that the world is going on around them and it is not kind of all centered around themselves. I absolutely can understand feeling intimidated and nervous to take your children out with you. I was a traveler that was like, I've been held up by a machete point in Latin America. I've gone through some hairy situations, and I can dwell on those things and live out of fear. But having my children in my life now, that is just the motivation to push through that, because I truly believe raising kids who understand the world is really how, you cross these barriers and you come to be compassionate, empathetic adults.
Yeah.
That being said,
Snap, 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 snap. Yes. That's how I
that
was
being
raised. That's how I
I
was raised.
know. And I do think that I got really lucky because I had these big travel experiences in my life, and I can kind of fall back on those things. But when I travel, it is the scariest thing I do. I don't travel because it's so easy. Easier is like staying put in our routine and our safety net. So I push through those feelings to try to create a deeper dimension, and then to throw the kids in the mix. It heightens everything, but it also heightens the beauty of everything. And it's my how I want to raise my kids. It's just of utmost importance, and to my husband, as a family. Yeah.
I think that that is one of the things that I feel the luckiest to have been brought up with.
Hmm.
Genuinely, I feel like I got that from my parents, but I also got that from my grandparents, and I just feel
Hmm.
like there is this expectation, I think, in my family that you are to go out into the world and
Hmm.
to see everything that is. I guess my grandmother, I think, is the only person who's ever really put it into such succinct words. But she was just like, you aren't a citizen of this country.
Yeah.
We are all contributing. We're all citizens of this world, and it's your responsibility to go out and to
Yeah.
learn, because just because we live a certain way does not make it wrong. Just because somebody else lives differently does not make it, or wait, just because we
Yep.
live a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it's the only right way to live. And it's your
Exactly.
responsibility to go out there and to just see the diversity of perspectives and ideas and food and culture and religion and art. And I just think that there's so much beauty to our differences, and they should not be something that is feared, and instead should be something that is celebrated.
Yeah, that is celebrated, embraced, and I love the idea of it being a responsibility, because it really, in my opinion, is. And I, even have family members who would say they're uncomfortable with some of the things that we're doing as a family with our children. And I feel the opposite. And I want to raise a child with an experience like with what you've had. Do you feel like as an adult, I mean, I know for me, I go back on I got to have these experiences, so this is what I want to do moving forward. There are some people like that might have the same experience but choose that they'd rather just stay put anyways. I can't really control that, if that's how my children are going to be anyways, but it sounds like from your experience being out and about with your family experiences that you want to continue doing that also.
Yeah, I feel like you touched on something earlier that I feel like maybe illustrates this perspective the best that I can come up with is just travel looks different, feels different. You get something different from it in different phases of life. And it was incredible to travel with my parents and my grandparents. I feel like there was a fearlessness to the way that both sets of parental units travel that I feel like I'm very lucky to have been brought up in.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I'm married and
Mm-hmm.
I have a career, and just the way that Owen and I go out into the world and the way that we travel looks very different. So even though we're starting to kind of touch on a lot of the places that I have been to before, but Owen has not, I'm getting to see a whole other side of these places because of the way that Owen and I travel together is very different than the way.
Sure.
Also, the place that I'm at in my life, what I'm picking
Yep.
up on, that always changes. But I feel like I do need to just like take a quick second and just say how like incredibly privileged and lucky I am to travel
100%.
the way that I have, and
Yeah.
also to have like a career and a life that has allowed that passion to continue. But I definitely feel like the entire existence of my life is built around allowing these things to continue to happen.
That's the thing of it. You have intentionally built a life that you want to be living in. And yeah, we are lucky to be coming from a place like that, but it also was intentional and took a lot of risk to get there as well. So it's a beautiful life.
It's a decision, if you will.
It definitely, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so something else that you touched on a little bit earlier that I would just like to circle back to a little bit is maybe let's talk about getting over nerves. And it doesn't matter how you're traveling, who you're with, solo, with a significant other, with kids.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach nervousness about the unknown?
The nervousness is always going to be there, in my opinion, whether you have gone on a million trips or not. There's either butterflies in your belly or like full out panic mode before you go, which I felt like both. And I feel like there's like two types of nervousness that you experience with travel. Like the first one is the logistics, just a nervous traveler. Did I pack the right things? What's the airport going to be like? Am I going to make my flight? Like, how am I going to get transportation when I get there? And those things, I think, ease up a little bit the more that you travel. And it just feels like a muscle that you flexed before. You've got tools in your toolkit. Like, I know I'm going to use Google Translate when I get out to Japan to figure out where I'm going, or I use like TripIt app that keeps my itinerary in this beautiful chronological order.
What was that one? I'm going to write that one down.
TripIt. TripIt.
Okay.
It's like been a game changer. Every time you get like your flight info, your car info, any itinerary, you forward it to TripIt. I think it's like TripIt. I'll have to look that up. But it throws it in your app and it places it with the confirmation details, the date, the time, and it arranges it. So at any given time, like we have a trip to Mexico City coming up, so I can just hit my Mexico City piece and I'll see my flight, when our food tour is, when the hotel check-in is, and it just goes through the whole. It's just this amazing way that takes a huge amount of the nerves away. Like I'm not shuffling through emails or trying, and you can access it when you're not online. So check out TripIt. Not sponsored.
Ooh, hot tip. Thank you. Okay.
Hot tip. So
That's
there's those like logistical nerves that you just have to kind of walk through and get tools in your toolbox. The other type of nerve, like is just of the bigness of travel. It's just the vulnerability that you're going to put yourself out there in a new place and not be in much control of it. And I feel like as I've evolved with my travel, that's almost the nerves. I'm almost chasing that feeling in a way. It's kind of
It is
sick.
fully addicting. Can confirm.
Like, so, I am like sleepless a few nights before I go on a trip every time. And I'm looking at my husband, why are we doing this again? What am I doing this for? It's just how I am. But it is like what motivates me to push through every time. And I think it's, I have this strong sense of whatever happens out there, I'm going to reach a new depth of understanding the world a little bit better, those people around me. Yeah, so those big nerves that you just have about being out there in the world, deep breath, maybe a meditation track. I listen to really calming music on my flight because I'm a pretty nervous flyer. That actually helps a lot. But I think what I've been trying to do in my later years as a traveler is just to embrace that feeling of scariness and use it to my advantage to really kind of push myself to stretch. There's not really a formula for it. What do you find?
There really isn't. And oh boy, I don't really get nervous.
Oh my
I really
God.
don't. I really don't. And so that's why I feel like I have to ask, because like I know that other people feel that way. It's just something that it just doesn't. It's pure excitement for me.
Good for you.
I just think that yeah, for the last like 8.5 years, all we've done is like live in this state of unknown. And I think that Owen and I feel that we are at our best when we are kind of standing on the precipice of the unknown, our comfort zone, what have you.
Yeah.
And so like, that's just where I feel like I thrive. But there's a really great quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I think that I'm going to paraphrase, and I'm almost positive I'm going to butcher this. So as the sphere of our knowledge grows, so does our sphere.
Keep going.
Okay.
I'm
just gonna look it up. Okay, so Neil deGrasse. It's really good. I don't want to butcher it. Okay, here it is. As the area of our knowledge grows, so too does the perimeter of our ignorance. I just think that is the most incredible quote, and I feel like I try to live in that quote. So I feel like there isn't really nervousness for me anymore, because I also just feel like the more you travel and the more you exist in this place of unknown, the more that you realize you can figure any scenario out. Because I think that a great deal of people's nervousness to travel is just like, well, what if this happens? What if my hotel reservation falls through? What if I miss my flight or my connecting flight, or I get robbed? Literally all of those things have happened to me. And I'm here to tell the tale. I can almost guarantee that every single time something has gone awry, I think that what was meant to happen ultimately usually plays out in that scenario. I feel like I just have to tell this one story because it's like kind of crazy. So we were living in Germany at the time. And I was swimming in a European league. So it meant that my swim meets were all over Europe. So pretty much every single weekend, we would take the train or a Ryanair flight to some other country to swim in a swim meet that would usually last like a day and a half to 2 days. But then we would always extend, just continue to do a little bit of traveling. And it was always something that we did as a family of 4. So my mom, my dad, and my brother and myself.
Cool.
But there was this one trip. My mom needed to go back to the States. And so it was my dad taking my brother and I to a swim meet in Naples, Italy. And the swim meet had gone so poorly.
Oh.
And then it was the night before. So Naples at the time, I have not been to Naples. cannot report back on the state of affairs in Naples, but it was primarily run by the town was run by the mafia. And so everything that you did in town, like you kind of like, you can park here, but you have to go to our coffee shop or else your car will get broken into. It was just this very like, that's just kind of how it is thing.
Tough place to travel to.
Yeah, did all the things. There's incredible art in Naples. Like some of the best art is in Naples. But so it was our last night. The next morning we were going to be taking our flight back. And that night we found out that my mom had been in a really bad car accident. Then we went to dinner and we like went to this multi-course, like traditional Italian, like country Italian meal, which was a really beautiful experience. And then we came out to our car and found out everything had been taken. We were packed to go to the airport. So everything was gone. everything that we had shown up in the country with was gone. Wow. And so it was just this like really brutal thing. My mom had been in this bad car accident. We had nothing. My dad's military, like so much was gone. Our passports were gone. I don't know why we didn't take them into the restaurant. That's actually a huge lesson learned right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep it on your
So we end up showing up at the airport with zero documentation, like nothing. And we're at the counter and the lady's like, I can't check you in. Like, you're telling me you're an American and you're here in Italy, but you live in Germany. Like, none of that makes sense. Right? And so we're standing there and I am in the 9th grade when this happens. Okay. And so I'm standing there and she's like, you have nothing. Like, even if you could just give me proof that like you live in Germany, like I will put you on this flight back to Heidelberg, Germany. And so I am like fishing around in my clothes. And these are just the clothes that I had worn to the restaurant the night before. And I found my German library card in my back pocket.
No way.
And I pulled it out and I showed the girl and she was just like, okay. And she put, she put this was was this pre 9/11?
It had to have been. That was what I was going to say. I
don't think it was. No, wait. It was. No. I'm trying to remember. It was like we moved to Germany. Oh, no. This was definitely after 9/11. No, it totally was. Yeah. So anyways, she let us on. She probably could have been fired for that, but she did let us back on the plane. And it was just kind of felt like it was the only thing that it just like, if we could just get home, everything would be okay. But it just like having those kinds of experiences, particularly something like that as a kid, there's like always a way through a scenario. And sometimes you just kind of have to like step back. I love the creative thinking and problem solving that often comes about when kind of put in a scenario like that. So I just feel like if you just have faith that you can figure anything out, that you just need to come at a problem with a level head, that there's usually there's a valuable lesson to be learned, like at the end of an experience like that.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Oh my gosh.
Pretty brutal.
And I think that when I think about having children and traveling with them and then giving them that sort of experience, then they have this confidence to move about the world, whether they're doing it in traveling situations or not, to, like you said, be creative, be a problem solver, like critical thinker, to really try to navigate through things.
Well, yeah. And also as a freshman in high school, to like be in the middle of an experience like that, and your dad, who's like traveled all over the world, been in the military for like all these years, is very like level-headed about everything. And to like realize that I had the power to like I was the one who was able to get us like up and over the hump of that problem. Obviously it sucks to like lose everything that you came there with, but like at the end of the day we were able to get home, and that's all that matters. And that story was not meant to scare anybody. I actually think that it makes me feel motivated to like get back out there, like the problem solving. I mean, it is scary to think like real things happen. Like everything was stolen and something super tragic happened while you guys were away. Like all these are the things I think that hold people back so often. Yeah. And I just think that it's important to get out of that because like the thing is, you talked about like your bubble. If
Right.
you will all like, if you know everything that could ever possibly go wrong in your bubble and you're like, okay, I got that. Like you never really realize or figure out what you're capable of. And I think that travel, in addition to all of the incredibly enriching experiences that you can have from 1,000 different perspectives, but it also just like makes you realize like how capable you are.
Yeah.
And it just gives you endless resources to point back to and be like, okay, well, this scenario is hard, but I've definitely been through worse.
But like, remember that time? Yeah.
Remember
exactly.
that time? Oh my God. Yeah. And it was so funny because like when we got home, we were recounting, you know, trying to figure out what all had been stolen. And I felt like the one solace that I had was that I had laid all of my dirty underwear like on the top of my bag. So like when I opened my bag, that was the first thing that I would, you know, take to the laundry. So I was like, that's what they get. Steal my stuff. That's what you get.
There's the punchline right there. Yeah. I mean, I think raising kids that are empathetic, that that are citizens of the world, and just so important too is that ability to move throughout situations because you've done hard things in life. And you know, travel for us especially, we don't do much cushy travel. It's not luxurious stuff, and I think it builds a lot of grit. It's good for the kids, it's good for us.
Totally. We love grit around here.
Yeah. A little sand in the hair, you know.
Yeah.
Totally. I get that. Yeah.
And I was going to say one last parting note on that theme, because I feel like you just brought up a great segue into the next topic that I want to talk to you about. But like, also when things go wrong, I'm just like, this is going to be such a good story to tell later. Yeah.
I know.
So if nothing else, you can always remember that like weird scenarios breed for really good stories to tell at dinner parties later.
It's so true. That's what my dad says. He's like, I only travel for the stories. I'm like, I mean, so.
It's a good reason to travel, honestly.
Yeah. I know.
This episode of Camp Nowhere is brought to you by Red Arc. For the last 4 years on the road, our entire life has been running on Red Arc's power management systems. Whether we're charging our camera gear, powering Starlink for remote work, or making this podcast in the middle of nowhere, Red Arc always keeps everything running smoothly. They've spent decades perfecting their products based on customer needs, putting in countless hours to design and test the toughest mobile power solutions out there. Born in the rugged terrain of Australia, Red Arc has been leading the way in mobile power solutions for 45 years. For more information about reliable off-grid power, go to headnowhere.com/redarc, which can also be found in the show notes. Hey there, Mac here. I don't know why I said that. It's always Mac. Anyways, if you're enjoying Camp Nowhere, maybe you would want to consider checking out our Patreon. By joining, you'll get access to a ton of cool things, such as the ad-free version of this podcast, early screenings to our films, behind-the-scenes glimpses into life on the road, and a whole lot more exclusive content. Plus, your support helps us keep creating and improving as multifaceted storytellers. We legitimately could not do it without you, so a big thank you to everyone who has already joined us in our sunny little corner of the internet. If you're curious, take a spin around at headnowhere.com/Patreon. See you there.
Okay, so logistics.
Yes.
Let's talk logistics. So you kind of touched on the fact that you're not doing glamorous travel. And in fact, you have come to be a little bit of a guru for Owen and I.
Thank you.
Leading up to, you were quite a big influence in us deciding to go to Japan for a month next month.
I'll take that as a compliment. You're gonna love it.
The highest of compliments.
In this episode, I am going to mention the fact that we're going to Japan on multiple occasions. That is true. That is happening. We will circle back to that, though, in the coming episode of Camp Nowhere. So come back in 2 weeks, and we'll go over all the details, how it came to be, and how Allie was so instrumental in that process. All right, let's get back into it.
Okay, so let's talk tips, tricks, points.
Yeah.
Miles are confusing. They were not built for normal human beings to understand, but this is kind of an area of expertise for you. So let's talk about it.
Sure. So points and miles that you leverage from credit card use can be super difficult and confusing and overwhelming. And then you're worried about your finances and your credit and all that jazz. So I definitely understand that being a huge pain point. I feel like I was kind of forced into learning about it just because I needed to travel more. And we aren't a family that can afford to travel more than like the regular typical one vacation a year sort of thing. So for me, I kind of was like, well, I can't live with one trip a year as a family. So I got to figure it out. And honestly, what it was for me was just hours and hours and hours of combing through everything and figuring it out. That being said, I had one specific goal when I first started learning about this, and it was to fly business class to Japan, round trip with Geo. And I just thought, if I can conquer a credit card points and miles redemption in business class to Asia, then I can do anything.
I love that you went into this with a very specific goal in mind. I feel like that's actually a great way to think about this. So it is, so in your experience, it's obviously beneficial to be trying to kind of like work these systems.
Yeah. I mean, I think we travel as a family like 4 to 5 times internationally a year now. And it is solely because of just investing in like tips and tricks and points and miles use as a traveler. So much so that we just wouldn't get out there like we would before. But I did do some things, like I spent a little bit of money on consulting, like with a points and miles expert. I bought a couple courses. I just have been scouring things and learning, and I back that up to being just an experienced traveler. And I feel like I'm able to put so much of this stuff to use. And then you throw kids into the mix, and now all of a sudden I'm learning and using things to help make travel with kids, more tolerable and more exciting, things like that. So
amazing. So do you have any specific tips? Obviously, okay, so allow me to do a shameless plug for you. Allie has a really amazing, just like what do you call it? Just like an email newsletter,
travel newsletter. Yep.
Yeah. And she's putting all of these like incredible tips and tricks for different point systems that are out there, different promotions that are going on. And kind of, as I mentioned a second ago, it's the reason why Owen and I are going to Japan for a month. So that's an incredible newsletter that will obviously be included in the show notes, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But have there been any major takeaways and like things that you feel like people should be paying more attention to?
Yeah, I think that obviously the points and miles, as a family of X amount of however many people, we are a family of 4, jumping on board with that literally changes. A flight for 4 to get to Europe will easily run you $3,000. We are going for like $200 of just paying in taxes and fees. And we're doing that a few times a year. So understanding the world of points and miles, and that is one of the things I include in every Tuesday newsletter, is some sort of teachable moment on how to accumulate points and miles, spend the points and miles, sometimes even about just learning how to book cheaper flights, just with either following a flight app or understanding redemptions or bonus transfers. That's all very confusing. But points and miles is definitely something that I will go back to time and time again. Other tips and tricks that I just learned as becoming a more of a seasoned traveler is the more organized you can be, the better off you are going to feel about your traveling. I wouldn't say I'm a nervous traveler, but after having kids, I kind of ramped it up to feeling more nervous than I used to. You're more of a relaxed traveler, lucky. But I feel like
this is blissful ignorance, I think.
yeah. That those days for me are long gone, unfortunately. my husband, we both kind of have jumped into this world of travel and educating. We're pivoting in our life right now because we want to pursue a life of travel, and therefore we are creating careers that support that. So he is actually the guy that's got all the tips and tricks around travel gear. He has a YouTube station where he makes lots of videos about that, but I've actually learned a ton from him about organizational pieces that have really helped me as like the mom and kind of the logistical leader of the pack to stay organized. And it just makes me, whether it's like the bag that I'm carrying or even like the insert that I have to carry our passports and our cards, those sorts of things that go a huge way when you're trying to get out the door to the airport, to your next destination.
Well, I was going to say, if you are nervous in any way traveling, I feel like holding on, finding any sense of like organization to just kind of take a little bit of, or give yourself like a little bit of peace of mind. I feel like find that wherever you can and hold on to it.
Yeah.
Just because you obviously are trying to like eliminate as many things that are holding you back as humanly possible.
For sure. And I am like very spontaneous. I would love to go where the wind blows. Like I just am really relaxed. And then I try to get like my kids and husband and I all to like these far parts of the world. And I realize that if you are more organized with your things, you're just going to enjoy your time better. So little systems that we have on our person or within our bags, everything just being more organized, which I've had to learn because, like I said, it's not just the way that I'm programmed. So now I'm learning systems from the very beginning, from when I book a trip and how I go about even finding options for a trip, and then how I'm packing for a trip. And just anything you can do to be a little bit more organized helps you feel like you're staying in control of a situation where you might feel a little out of control.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I also just find that if you're not managing your stuff, it just feels like you can turn your focus entirely onto what you're doing instead of just like the juggling act, because there's always some form of juggling act happening when you're doing this type of travel where you're like, okay, do I have all my stuff? Do I have all my documents? Do I got my money? Do I have all of like... Yeah. So if you just have a system in place for that, it can just turn your focus back on to what you're doing.
And I think you could probably relate to this living how you guys live nomadically out there. Like when we lived in the van, we felt this acutely. And now as we travel kind of internationally as a family, like less is more. And I just think it's such a golden nugget for people where you really are a slave to your stuff, whether you are living in a home, but especially when you're out there traveling, because you are just having to keep track of all the things. It's hard to zip your suitcase. You can't buy the little souvenir that you might have wanted to take home. Like it goes on. And you almost always will be better. I mean, you just always are better off being a light packer. So we have a strict rule of carry on only. Each of us have the same size carry on bag and a book bag.
And carry on only?
Carry on only, no matter what.
You guys are lighter packers than we are, I think.
I don't know.
Yes. We're never carry on only.
Of your truck situation with your clothes, you have those packing cubes, everything you have.
I was going to say, huge shout out to Eagle Creek. Yeah, and they're actually a sponsor of the podcast. Love you guys.
Love that.
And like we are the organized people that we are because of them and the packing cubes that we've been using for 8.5 years. They're incredible and they always come with us. But like our problem is the camera gear. Like we're small packers and we're like, oh, look at this. We have hardly anything. And then we're like, shit, we haven't looked at any of our camera gear yet. And then it just like instantly doubles. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it's a problem, but it's also our passion and our life's work. So I'm not going to complain.
So you're going to sacrifice, you take a couple less sweaters or whatever, and a little more camera gear. I can't really help you out with that. There's not really
until cameras are just smaller. It's just not. It's just going to be a thing for us, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We went recently on a trip to Alaska with our extended family, and it was a very challenging trip to pack for because, Yeah, I mean, you
It's
know
the full
how
spectrum of
Alaska
clothes.
intimately. It is. I
Full spectrum.
felt like beginner status trying to pack for that trip.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. And I think that by the time this episode comes out, the episode that has previously come out is going to be us going to Alaska. And packing for that trip, I was like, I feel like I have no clothes, but it's taking up this
Yes.
massive duffel bag because just cold weather
Yes.
clothes in general are so bulky. But that's a great place for a packing cube because you can really like compress that gear
Yeah.
significantly by putting it into some sub organizational system within your bag.
Yes.
But yeah, we're not on your level. I'm so impressed.
Carry on homely.
Yeah, wow.
Wow. Well, I'll take that. I mean, I also think there is another nice thing to be said throughout the years. We've just kind of created a little bit more of and you can appreciate this, like a capsule wardrobe that functions really well. So if you have, you know, a not compression, what is it called? Like a puffer jacket or whatever that you can, you know, they make them in all types of quality and some that pack really small. That goes so far when you're trying to pack, especially in a carry-on or something like that.
Yeah, you just brought up a very good point. So I definitely have what I call my like travel capsule wardrobe. And I will also say that that wardrobe is also very subdued in both like colors and patterns and such. I don't know that people talk about this very often, but I feel like when I'm traveling, I want to look nice in every scenario and like put together, but I also am trying to dress in a way that does not draw attention to me.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
feel like when
That's a great point.
when I'm traveling in this way, I feel like I'm trying to blend into the background and be more of an observer than I do in my day-to-day life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do. I think that kind of speaks to who you are as a traveler also, because I think a lot of people, you know, it depends on what kind of trip you're taking, and will end up packing, I think, more for the idea of like the occasion, like the going out in the evening occasion, or wanted to make sure that they've got, you know, the sundresses that kind of look the way that the culture has them out or whatever. I definitely go more towards you with blend in a little bit more, certainly as practical as I can make it. Yeah, I think it's more dialed you can get in with that stuff. It just helps so much.
Yeah. And I feel like that's something that kind of is always kind of like changing over time. And it's something that I'm actually thinking a lot about because I think that this trip to Japan that we're about to take, I think that we're going to need, once again, we're going to need the full spectrum of clothes. Like, because we're going in the fall/early winter and we're doing a lot of city stuff. But I think that we're also going to do like a multi-day pilgrimage walk. So,
oh my gosh, that's
so I just
amazing.
like, we're needing this full spectrum of clothes
Yeah.
from like full blown technical gear also to, you know, I like to look cute when I'm in town too. So,
Yeah. I will say our Japan trip last October, I like nailed my packing.
Did you?
Like, I've gone on trips since, and I still look back and be like, man, every day
I really
felt
hit the nail on the
good.
head.
Like, you know that feeling.
Yes, I
Things
do.
I could wear, mix and
Feels
match.
good, man.
I always felt, yes, that goes down in history of my best trip that I packed for. But that was October.
It's going to be a touch on the cooler side. Yeah. So there was actually it like hit all of the tallest peaks in the Japanese Alps. It's closing, like the hut system is closing like the week before we get there. It's just going to be like, we're going to be a little bit too deep into fall and winter, I think, for that. So I think that the next best thing, I think, for us is going to be this pilgrimage that goes through. It's kind of hits a bunch of different temples. And it also is going through a ton of like rural Japanese communities, and you stay in traditional homestays for that.
Is this on foot?
Yes.
Oh, How dreamy. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was actually just reading about it before we started recording. Let's see. I'm trying to remember how. I think that we're probably going to take 3 or 4 days to do it. And it is 60 kilometers, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyways,
amazing. Oh, yes. I can't
pumped.
wait to hear about it.
So yeah, I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to the packing side
Yeah,
of
throw that into the
things.
mix of your packing. I can't wait to see what you come up with.
I know. I think that I just need to have like a separate episode that just gets real nerdy about packing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did want to ask, because I think that we're kind of winding things down around here. Do you have a favorite? I know that this is more Geo's thing, but do you have a favorite piece of gear that you don't feel like you leave without for international travels? One for yourself, one for the kids.
Ooh. So yeah, the running joke now is that Geo is like the gear guy, which means that most of the time he's like checking out new gear for like flights, long haul flights, things like that. So what we've been finding is that he is sitting in front, like with his over ear head noise canceling headphones and his like super deluxe neck pillow thing. And I am behind, sandwiched between two children, trying to keep them entertained for 15 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Like,
I feel
how
like
did this happen?
where are the checks and balances here?
I know. He calls it work, you know.
Yeah, I see you. I see you, Geo.
So, but I will say he does the testing and then it benefits us all at some point. For international travel, for me, it's probably simpler than you think. I always pack a collapsible day pack, you know, that you just pack there. And then I have a backpack that we store our water bottles in and anything that we need, our umbrellas and maps and all the things that we need to go out on foot. I love wearing a sling bag on the day of travel. And we have found TomTok is just the sling bag that I really love. It's very like middle of the road. It's not super high end, luxury, expensive stuff. But it's a TomTok sling bag, and I just love it. There's pockets that I keep, you know, my important documents. I can pull it around to the front of me, easy access for stuff. So I'm big into the bag situation. I will say a quick little tip is that we get little single packets of laundry detergent, and we always pack those with us, which you would think is like for hostels or whatever. But we were in Croatia and we had 4 different Airbnbs, and every single one of them had a broken washing machine. Like, couldn't even make it up. It was just the weirdest luck ever. And Geo, because he's testing out gear, had this and a laundry cord line. And so we just did it in the sink and we dried everything out a couple times over the course of a few weeks. And it was like this, I was so glad that we had that.
Oh, it's so funny that you say that. We were actually gifted a tiny, I think it's made by Sea to Summit, and it's a teeny tiny little clothesline. And I think that it literally is just a tiny bit bigger than like a big thing of floss, and it also is a clothesline.
Cool.
And because we've heard that in a lot of European countries it's really good to have a clothesline.
Yeah.
So I also carry laundry detergent, but it's a block of laundry detergent. And so it goes into your same like soap carrying kind of case.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that the company, it's actually a company based out of New Zealand called Ethique, but it's spelled ETHIQUE. And it's just this really solid bar. And that thing is awesome. While we were in Vietnam this spring, we were just like literally romping around in the rainforest for days, and then we needed to like wear those clothes again, but I typically will only carry that was like my only outfit that fit those needs. Yes. And so like at night in our room, I just took a shower with our clothes and like scrubbed them on the floor of the bathtub, and then just like stood on top of them and like stamped on them in the shower. hung them up outside, and they were ready to go the next day. So I feel like carrying some way to like wash your clothes, even if it's just like in a sink, is always such a handy thing to have.
Yeah, even if you think you're not going to use it. Like, I did not think we were going to need it, but I love the idea of the bar. I'm going to look that up with just for waste purposes and things.
Yeah, I use their shampoo and conditioner bars as well. I love all of their love all of their
I'll have
stuff.
to look that up. Yeah. Oh, that's really
great
cool.
company. Okay, one last thing. Oh, do you have a piece of gear for the kids that you don't leave?
Oh, gear for the kids. Gosh, they each. Well, the thing I focus most on with the kids is entertainment stuff.
I was going to ask, what do they like to do for entertainment on the flights?
Yeah, well, on the flights, it's like anything you want with screens. There's like the kids
Locked
just
in.
locked in like 9 hours. We got kids, they sit in the row up in front of us, and Gio and I sit together, and they like get their meals up there. They've got their movie situation.
I feel
up
like
there. So,
they probably feel like they are just like the coolest kids alive.
like
They're like,
ruling.
look at
Yeah.
us.
yeah. Like they don't turn around to need us for anything. And Gio and I are just we're like, look at them, like pro travelers, but really they're just like kids who get a screen, unlimited usage. And I'm good with that. I have no problem with that. But like, so Sully gets really car sick, so we can't do a lot in like we're doing bus trips or car trips or anything like that. But for entertainment, like in the Airbnb and stuff, we love like little dry erase games. You can find like little deck cards with mazes or multiplications or finding different objects that are listed anyway that you can wipe off. So we do things like that. We have a pad that you can write on and then click a button and it erases. So we play as a family games like that all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds super fun.
Yeah.
If there is one thing that people ask me more than anything else, it's how I store my clothes on the road. I have been using the same set of Eagle Creek packet cubes for the last 8.5 years. Since 1975, Eagle Creek has logged more miles and cleared customs more than anyone in the business. That hard-won insight is built into everything they make, from luggage to packing cubes and everything in between. In fact, I store my film in an Eagle Creek bag that was handed down to me from my grandmother who used it in her travels over 20 years ago. And guess what? It's still going strong. Check them out at headnowhere.com/Eagle Creek. As longtime fans of Eagle Creek, we're proud to have them as a part of our everyday life, but also as a sponsor of Camp Nowhere. 1 trekking pole. 2 trekking pole. I was just setting up my trekking poles because we are about to go for a hike, and I had a thought. I love my trekking poles so much. Just setting them up gets me so stoked to be out on trail. And I think that just having the right piece of gear for the job just kind of does that to you. It makes you excited to get outside and do what you love. As a self-proclaimed gear nerd, I have made detailed gear guides plus some handy affiliate links and discount codes for brands that we personally know, love, and trust. If you decide to grab anything from those links or gear guides, it helps support all of our creative projects that we're working on, from films to podcasts and life on the move. So, if you are gearing up for your next adventure, check it out at headnowhere.com/gear, and thank you so much for helping us stay rolling. Okay, gotta run. This trail is not gonna hike itself.
Do you have a book recommendation? And no pressure if you don't.
Oh gosh.
Just a book that's jumped out to you.
I know. Well, I've just finished like 2 amazing books that I couldn't put down, but I'm infamous for not even knowing. No, I can't answer that because I don't ever know who I'm reading or what title is. But I wish that I had a really good book recommendation.
Oh yeah, no problem. I just
but do you?
That one's
I would love one.
Actually, yeah, just a second. Been really into graphic novels lately.
Oh, I love that.
This one is called Ducks, and it's 2 years in the oil sands. This is not for children. I repeat, this is not for children. It's an incredible. So the oil sands it's a type of oil mining that's done up in northern Canada, and it attracts a lot of people from all over the world because they make incredible money. Yeah. And it's about a woman's experience in a primarily male-dominated, dark and mentally unhealthy environment. That one's heavy.
And it's a graphic novel?
Yeah, this one is very heavy.
Interesting.
And unfortunately does deal with sexual abuse, but it is very good. Very, very moving. Yeah. I found the illustrations in it to be incredibly powerful. Like there's so much that is said in this book in the illustrations that are just, oof. But yeah, I've really been enjoying graphic novels. And I think that what is so powerful about them is just, I feel like the illustrations communicate feelings and emotions in a way that I just don't, sometimes I feel like words can be cheap. And I think that this book, Ducks in particular, just does an incredible job. And that came as a very, very highly recommended from a friend who is Canadian. And I really thoroughly enjoy. I laughed, I cried. It was a really good one.
What a great recommendation. It made me think, something else made me think. I finished a little while ago, and it's well known, but the book, The Women, and it focuses on the combat nurses of the Vietnam War.
My mom recommended that.
Really?
Yeah.
It was fantastic. It was a beautiful story that gave an insight into like an era, a whole demographic that I hadn't put much thought in. And I, as a nurse myself, I found it really fascinating. But we always learned and heard so much about the soldiers' experiences coming home. And this gives the perspective of these nurses and medics coming home and what they dealt with as well. So yeah, it was a beautiful story. It was very difficult to read.
What an important perspective from I mean, honestly, I feel like what they probably witnessed, you know.
I mean, at the same level, one could argue, of PTSD and trauma, and they came back with all the needs for the mental health services, but were getting denied because they were told they weren't in the front lines, you know. So, but they saw so much.
Luckily, we've learned a lot about mental health since then.
Thank goodness. Yeah. Thank goodness. We're coming. We're getting there. We still got a ways to go, but we're getting there. Yeah.
We're getting there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Allie. Okay. Where in the world / the internet can people find you, your, all of the information that you're putting together? How can people follow along with your adventures as well?
So my newsletter, we have a website. It's up and coming, but it's there. Bookedit.travel. And you can find my newsletter there. It's called Booked It on Points. And so you can sign up for that. It comes out twice a week, filled with tons of tips and tricks. It also comes with a lot of personal stories and anecdotes from me as far as being a mom and a wife and a traveler in this world. And then you can follow me on Instagram at BookedItTravel as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. You are such a source of like knowledge and inspiration for both myself and Owen. So thank you so much for taking the time to share it with the world at large today.
The world. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Yay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Allie for her expertise and her time. We talked for a while on this topic, and honestly, we could have kept going. It's just such a big topic. There's so much in there. So please send me your questions relating to international travel, traveling with a family, or really honestly, any of the topics that we covered today. You can find our website at campnowhere.com. Shoot me a message. Instagram, YouTube, you take your pick, reach out, let me know. Because I think that this is something that we should absolutely circle back to and potentially do it in a little bit more detail at a later date. But I just wanted to say thank you all for being here. None of this would be possible without you. And I really, really do enjoy doing this. But join us 2 weeks from now. We will have another episode diving into all things Japan. I am so excited. All right. Chat soon.